It's, of course, your professor, Dr. Kale, for Phil Ethics, and I'm really looking forward to spending a little bit of time with you. I went through all the forum posts from last week, as I do, and I really appreciated the work that you did in general, but also the advice that you gave to one another with regards to helping each other think through how to develop more character. So the main thing I want to do in this video lecture is to just go through some of the comments that you left, and then I'll also reflect on those, given what I've taught you on Aristotle so far, and also Aquinas. As far as Aquinas goes for this week, really most of everything that you need to know is in the instructional videos for the week. And so I think if you go through those carefully and you'll be prepping for a quiz, you'll get a good understanding of Aquinas as well. So I thought I would take this opportunity for this week's video lecture to go through some of your comments and then make a few connections. So um, the first set of comments, and again, I just took representative samples. There were a lot more great comments than these. But the first ones that I think are interesting are the ones here on God and faith. And this is directly relevant to the topic for the week, which is what does a Christian teleology look like? Um, so when we study Aquinas, we're actually studying a philosopher who is a thoroughgoing Aristotelian, but is coming from a perspective of faith. And so some of the comments that you made with regards to faith are things that Aquinas would agree with and actually kind of help us better understand his perspective. So, for instance, this one student said, I am able to have courage because I serve a God who has given me all the power and strength to conquer any and everything. And this fits right into what you've read from Aquinas and listened to in the other lectures. That Aquinas, one difference between him and Aristotle is that he has three virtues that God gives us: hope, faith, and love, that come as gifts from God. And that when we experience those, it enables us to fully achieve all of the other virtues, right? So, what this student says about courage is true of all of the virtues for the Christian. And that is that the power of God can work from within you and enable you to perfect all of these virtues, or rather to say, He will perfect them in you. And so I appreciated the way that this student said this. Look, I serve a God who has given me all the power and strength to conquer any and everything. For Aristotle, nobody gives you virtues, right? You earn them. You fix your values in your head, and then you try to mold yourself in accordance with your values. That's habit, right? You do the courageous thing over and over again in order to become courageous. And for us as Christians, God is able to take that natural process and make it supernatural. So I thought that was great. The other thing that another student was talking about self-deprecation. That's where your views of yourself are not honest, but instead you kind of put yourself down. You have low self-esteem. And of course, faith in God is going to be relevant to achieving a proper and a healthy attitude towards yourself. So I appreciate what this student says here. I can be self deprecating at times. I say mean things to myself that I would never say to someone else. And I've done the same thing, so I can relate to this. So I had to, and I'm still learning how to love myself, to treat myself like I would treat others. And one thing that helps me fix this is to remember that God loves me no matter what, and that I will always be enough for Him. And so I really appreciate that. That's another virtue. There's so many of them, but that's another virtue where knowing God and being secure in God's love for you can really help you feel avoid something like self-deprecation, can help you avoid things like anxiety, can help you have more courage, right? So I really like the way the student put this, and it's certainly one that I can relate to. And I will say that God is our heavenly parent, and His. I felt when I became a parent, I discovered what that love feels like, and so it gave me just extreme confidence and peace. Uh, Once I figured out how much I loved my son, and then realized that God's way better, way more perfect parent than I am, I was able to rest in that. And so I really appreciate what this student says about avoiding self deprecation. So, um, The other was acceptance. So this is also related to Thomas Aquinas's sort of divine perspective or Christian perspective. And acceptance is the ability to accept and move on from, and actually maybe gain something from things that happen that you don't want to happen. Right. And so what this student said is, what I did learn was this: you can't rewind and change the past, but you can grow for the future. And I thought that was put very well. You can't rewind and change the path, but you can grow for the future. And notice that the person who is just obsessing over some mistakes they made in the past or things that didn't go their way in the past, that is a person who's trying to rewind and change the past. But you can't do that. So that person would have that vice of excess, which is obsession over something that they could not control, right? Or the vice of deficiency is resignation, which is where you don't even try anymore to grow for the future. If you failed enough in a certain area, you're like, I'm just not good at that, right? I'm just a selfish person, or I just don't have control over my desires, or whatever. They just resign themselves. The proper attitude is, hey, I accept what's happened, but there's a whole future out in front of me. And what Aristotle says is right. I can mold myself through repetition and through practice and reflection and getting wisdom from others into the person that I want to be. And from a Christian perspective, it's not just a natural process or a psychological process. It's going to be a spiritual process in which God, by his Spirit, will pull you up for that. So I really like that. And underneath acceptance here, I put these other comments because I think they're related. If you have thankfulness, if you deal well with anxiety, that's going to help you with the virtue of acceptance. So the first is thankfulness. Sometimes I really think this is the most important virtue. And I try to get in the habit. I get into habits and out of them all the time. But on my way to work, I will just thank God for everything I can think of. And it's important just to be a grateful person who acknowledges good things, but it also changes my attitude, right? So this student said, I feel that sometimes we need to be reminded that every day is a blessing and every day is not promised. So let's live in the moment. Let's be thankful for everything that we have. And I think that thankfulness does help us have other virtues as well. So that was a great point. Dealing with anxiety, a perspective of faith can really help us with this. One student responded to another who had responded to her. You are so right. God is so much bigger than we are, and he has such an amazing plan in store for each and every one of us that we cannot see. So I definitely need to work on just handing things over to him and not worrying about it. And again, from a perspective of faith, one of my favorite verses is when Jesus says, I am the vine and you are the branches. Abide in me. You'll stay connected to me. Abide in me and I in you, and you'll bear much fruit. You don't have to worry about it. Trust that I'm working through you and you'll bear much fruit. So, and then another student said something really practical here, dealing with anxiety, writing down their thoughts. This student said, I find that writing down my thoughts and feelings that I'm having, even if I am in a good mood, I'll write down my thoughts and get it onto paper so I can get it out of my head. And this is definitely something I have done as well. I feel that if my thoughts are on the paper rather than in my mind, it helps me to realize the good that is around me and that my anxieties can seem small compared to the goodness around you. I thought that's great advice. Right? If you're anxious about things, write down, I'm anxious about this, I'm anxious about that, I'm anxious about this. And I think that that's true. You get them out of your head, you get them onto paper, you can read them, they don't seem as big. And also, since they're written down, you feel like your mind subconsciously thinks, oh, I don't have to keep thinking about these things, right? They're written down. Self-reminding. I appreciated this as well. When I feel myself getting anxious about lacking control of situations or my environment, I say this to myself: you can only control what you can control. Boy, my mom used to say that to me all the time. And I repeat it. And I pray if I feel it getting too bad. Right? And these self-reminders are so important. Words are powerful. And it's good for you to remind. You can only control what you can control. You can only control what you can control. If you could say that over and over again, it can get your mind out of a certain rut. And there's all kinds of self-reminding that we can do. So I thought that that's really helpful for us to think in terms of, what do I need to be reminded about? Maybe I could write those things down. Maybe I can get in the habit of saying those things to myself instead of saying negative things to myself. I thought this student had given this piece of advice, and it made me realize, oh, this is something else that we could talk about. Uh, we've talked about all the aspects of the flourishing life according to Aristotle. Um, if you develop those aspects, it will help you to develop the virtues, and the more you develop the virtues, the more you can develop those aspects. So they're intertwined, right? And there's a big influence of health on how virtuous you can be, right? How excellent you can be in these various ways. So this student said, I do attempt to develop these virtues by practicing mindfulness and gratitude. And so we already touched on that, like being aware of my situation and having gratitude, exercising and sleep. And you could throw in there too, eating right. It makes a big difference. I didn't get enough sleep yesterday, and I had a talk that I gave last night. And boy, I was not in a good mood. And so simple things like eating right, exercising, and getting proper sleep, they can help you have temperance, have courage, have wittiness, have honesty, and all of the other virtues. If you are beat, and if you're not exercising, so you're not feeling strong, and you're not feeling good about yourself, it's going to be hard for you to grow in terms of the character traits that you want. So I appreciate that this student brought this up, and it brings up the larger issue that the elements of flourishing help to promote the virtues, and the virtues help to promote the elements of flourishing. And we could think of a lot of other examples beyond health. I liked this comment, and I thought I would also reflect on it a little bit. We talk about being true to ourselves, right? And there's a very important insight here that's absolutely accurate. And then there are ways in which we could take this the wrong way as well. But I love what this student says. Some advice that I have for my classmates for developing these traits is always be true to yourself, right? I'll get into a situation because of social pressure. I can conform to what other people expect of me instead of, wait a minute, this isn't who I am. I want to be true to who I am and to my character traits. And I don't care so much what people think about me, right? So the advice is so important. Be true to yourself. Don't try to be like other people. Know who you are, develop your character, and live in accordance with it. And let the chips fall where they may, right? So this is good advice. Always be true to yourself. You can't fake your feelings, and you can't fake who you are or what you are. If you are yourself and true to yourself, all things will get better from there. And I did want to comment on the second sentence. You can't fake your feelings, and you can't fake who you are or what you are. This could be a whole class. It could be a whole series of classes in order to really deal with this sentence with the proper nuance. As you know, Aristotle does say, and I've given a couple examples in class, not an issue of faking feelings, but if I feel one way, but my values tell me this is really what I value, I can act in accordance with my values, and then my feelings will come along. I think that is very true. I say, look, I value not being honest. I value not gossiping. I value not talking behind other people's backs, though I really want to do those things, right? And when I first start any kind of a habit, whether it's a health habit or a character habit, it does not feel right to me. It doesn't feel natural to me. And so I create the right feelings through practice, right? So being true to ourselves does not mean I'm going to be true to whatever feelings I happen to have in the moment. And it's clear from the context that's not what this student meant. But being true to yourself means that when you have developed your values, then be true to those values, right? And then there'll be some feelings that people want you to feel, and maybe you were raised in a certain way, and you just can't pretend that you believe these things anymore, or that you feel this way. And it's so important for you to realize, gosh, I don't feel that this is true. I don't feel that this is right. I disagree with my parents on this, or I disagree with my friends on this. I agree with my parents, and then you can change, right? And then you think things through, but we can change our feelings over time, right? So if I say listen to my gut or be true to myself, I think that that's so important and true. But the prerequisite is that my gut feelings have been trained through wisdom and reflection and practice, and that my feelings have been trained by my learning what the true good things are, what my values are, having mentors help me with that, and then I practice over time. And most of you are young. Most of you are 21 or younger who are in this class. Your feelings are going to change and your values are going to change. And what you want to do is you want to be in control of those. So, in short, being true to yourself is absolutely essential. And I think the key thing is that the core way of being true to yourself is to be true to your values. Your feelings can come and go, right? But once you're mature in your values, right, you will create new feelings. So anyway, I really appreciated what the student said, and I also wanted to kind of break it down and make a couple distinctions there that hopefully you find interesting and perhaps helpful. Um, Forcing your opinions on others. I used to do this quite a bit. Do I do it now? I hope not. I guess we all do this to one degree or another. Um, this student said, look, it's hard for me to give advice to you because I don't like to force my opinions on others. Oh, that's annoying. Drum lessons. Um, I've never thought of myself as an advice giver. It's hard because people might push aside what you're saying because they only hear what they want to hear. I'm going to pause there because I would love to ask you all in class, so I'm trying to remember to do this. How many people have taken your advice versus how many people have ignored your advice? And I feel like, I give pretty good advice, but if people aren't ready to really listen to your advice, if they're just not in the place, it's wasted breath. So many people just do not listen to advice. They already know what they want to do. So that's what I've found to be true in my experience and other people I've talked to. I don't have any scientific studies on this, so I'd be interested to know if people listen to your advice or if you listen to other people's advice, if you really take it to heart. Because I think it's true that people hear only what they want to hear sometimes. I think that's kind of true. On the other hand, giving advice is so important because it allows others to see things from a different perspective. And so this person answered their own concern. Oh, I should stop that. Oh, now where's my face? I gotta get my face back. I think I can pause this. No, don't y'all want to see my face? Let's get rid of this. There's my face. Come back here, face. All right. Anyway, that's see my face and all those dumb reminders coming. Yeah. Forcing your everything has a mean, right? It's not an issue of forcing our opinions on others if we share with them, or certainly if they ask us for our opinion, but also, you share it in an open and loving way, and you ask their opinion at the same time. I think it can be done very graciously. Of course, this is very Aristotelian. So the student points out that virtues are a habit. I'm very hard on myself, so when I make a mistake or my expectations are not met, I can be very negative. Just remember that no one is perfect. Virtues are habitual, so the more you do them, the more quickly they become a part of you. And so that's just straight Aristotle, and I think that's absolutely true. And so if we've, maybe our parents are really hard on us, or maybe it just comes from inside. But if we should not expect perfection. I think this is so true. And I'm a lot older than you, and I can't expect perfection. I strive for it. And if I don't hit it, I try again, right? Nobody's perfect. I think that's absolutely true. The more you practice things, the better you get at them. And there are things I'm excellent at now in terms of my life, in terms of health, in terms of character that I wasn't. And it's not because I finally figured it out in my head. It's because I practiced. And then there's a lot of other things I'm still practicing, right? So another student said, I believe if one of the virtues is a priority for you to succeed in, you'll be able to do it. And I thought, that's a really good point. Like, is it really something we want? You've got to want it, right? And if you do want it, then you can achieve it by habituation, by practice. Um, and one student, for instance, said this: over the summer leading into my freshman year, I forced myself into social situations with the sole mentality of doing something I would normally never do. Right? And I talked with you about Herb Alexander and how he did a similar sort of thing. So if something becomes a priority for you, some people have New Year's resolutions. You can make a character trait your New Year's resolution and take it seriously and just force yourself into the situations where you'll have to develop that trait. So that was a great point. I also appreciate this advice to daily acts of kindness. What if you made it your point just to do something kind for someone every day, whether it's just listening or a smile or it can be more involved? That's a great habit. If you really say, I need to do it every day, I'm not just going to say, oh, I should be kind. I'm going to be concrete about this. I'm going to write down at the end of the day what I did that was kind, right? And then the pacing yourself in the balance is so helpful. This student says, I would say not to try to do too much at once, as that can become overwhelming and unsuccessful. And it does relate to this no one is perfect, right? Observation. As in everything in life, I'm not going to try to become perfect right now in everything. There are seasons in life. There's a season when you work on this. There's a season when you work on that. And I appreciated that. And we know that balance is an important part of the thriving life. We talked about really wanting it. I thought that was a great point. Here's practical advice that Aristotle gives us that we talked about last week for developing the virtues. He says if you find yourself on one end of the spectrum in terms of an extreme, if you're in the excess or you're in the deficiency, he says to aim for the other side. So you don't aim for the mean, you aim for the other extreme, especially if you're just really not used to experiencing, for instance, anger. In my case, as I shared last week, confrontation and anger is something I was never comfortable with. I had to get comfortable with it, so I had to just confront people. I had to share anger, and then I learned over time how to do it wisely, right? So I can relate to this comment here. People pleasing, I guess probably most people can relate to this, but it really has been an issue for me. This student said, I had an excess amount of generosity. Because I would consider myself a people pleaser, I tend to go out of my way for others, whether this means devoting all of my emotional energy or surprising them with small surprises to cheer them up after a hard day. And oftentimes throughout my life, it hasn't been reciprocated. Then I feel like I'm being taken advantage of since I care so much for other people despite not being treated with the same respect and love. What was her solution or his solution? Recently, I have been really focusing on putting myself first, which has led me to discover a lot of new things about myself, right? So it's this I'm sure was difficult. And what this student had to do was say, hey, I have to be comfortable with the opposite extreme. Maybe being selfish, or people thinking I'm selfish, or me feeling that I'm selfish. Because I'm people pleasing all the time, I'm going to spend a period of time where I am selfish, or at least I feel selfish, or other people might think I'm selfish, but I've got to get to know myself and value my own needs. That is so wise, because you know what? Your self-esteem can come from pleasing other people, and you might not know yourself at all. And so I really appreciate what this student said. And obviously, the student said it has led him or her to discover a lot of new things about themselves. And I just think this putting yourself first, it's related to what we mentioned before about health, right? It's absolutely important that that you take care of yourself so that you can be a productive member of your community. It just makes a lot of sense. Stepping outside of your comfort zone was mentioned by a number of people, and this is obviously crucial, right? What you're comfortable with doesn't work. You have to try what's uncomfortable, right? That's the only way you can change, right? So if you're uncomfortable doing something, but your values tell you this is the right thing to do, this is the kind of person I want to be, then it's going to feel uncomfortable. And so just keep doing it even though it feels uncomfortable, and then it will be your new comfort zone after a while. We just have a few more of these I thought I would comment on. Validating your feelings. In order to develop this character trait, I think a good place to start would be validating my feelings and using it accordingly. I try to separate feeling from other thoughts. If I understand where my feeling of being upset or being angry originates from, I can use it to allow me to elicit a means to change and or to speak to people and have the issue addressed. This is so intelligent, so wise. If you're feeling feelings, you should take the time to ask, well, okay, first of all, where are these feelings coming from? Or not, that's second actually. First of all is, okay, these are my feelings. They're real, and I don't care what other people think about them. I don't care if I think they're not rational or I think I'm going overboard. These are my feelings. I accept them. Now, where are they coming from? And what can I do about them? Am I having the right amount of this feeling in this situation in order to produce good results? Or is it taking me over? Right? We can work on that. I start by saying, these are my feelings. These are the feelings I'm having. And then I can move on from there. Acknowledging and thinking about things like this will help me develop other traits as well. So I thought that was really wise. You shouldn't feel bad for feelings. You need to acknowledge that they're there and then say, oh, if I don't agree with these feelings, how can I go about changing them? Trying to not feel things would drive you crazy. I've experienced that. We talked about acceptance already, I'm pretty sure, right? Yes, I think we did, right? So a number of you said things that actually connected on imagination. And this is one of our most highly underused capabilities, is our imagination, right? And that is because when you imagine things, you can come to empathize, you can come to really feel like they're possible for you, and you can come to achieve goals that you otherwise never would have achieved. So it's important to use your imagination. So this student said, hey, think about the end goal. Right? And this is what we were starting to do last week. We don't do enough. What is the end of human life? Like, what is the purpose of my life? And then there's a lot of intermediate purposes I should think about as well, right? Well, where do I want to be in 5 years and 10 years in my relationship with God, if I have a relationship with God, or in my seeking of God, or in my relationships with other people, or in my career, or my knowledge, or my creativity, my intellectual growth, all those things. So what are your goals? So this student said, as for finding self-motivation, I would suggest looking at your end goal. Think about where you want to be in life and ask yourself, for instance, how will taking classes like philosophy in college help me achieve that goal? Also remember, a person rarely looks back and regrets working hard. Yeah, I think those are two good pieces of advice. Think about your end goals, not just think about them, imagine them. When I was working on my dissertation in philosophy from Notre Dame, it was a long process, and I would imagine myself sitting on my front yard in my chair with my completed dissertation that had been approved. I would have just imagined that, right? I'm like, yeah, that would be incredible. Or getting my first job like I got at Roberts. My first full-time job was at Roberts, and boy, you just imagine those things and you can almost taste it. That gives you a lot of motivation. So I definitely agree with this point. Advice on developing virtues overall. The student said, some advice I could give to my classmates is to treat others how you would want to be treated. I know we've heard that our entire lives, but if we really lived that through the day, we'd be living in a different world. And that also is an invitation to use my imagination, right? I'm interacting with my best friend, or I'm interacting with my boss. Let me imagine, what is a day in the life of my boss like? And how would they want me to interact with them? Or a day in the life of one of my students. Can I imagine what it's like to be you? Or in my professor, if you're me, right? Or your best friend, or your spouse. So yeah, I think we hear it all the time, but if we used our imagination to really think about what it would be like to be someone else, and then how we would want to be treated, that could definitely help us develop all of the virtues. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I hope you're finding this interesting. I just think this is so true, and it's very Aristotelian. The people you hang out with are going to have a profound impact on who you are, just because we're social beings. We talked about last week that you're a polis being, which means that you first of all, you're about relationships, but you desire to be in a group with the same values and goals and the same perspective on what is good. So if you're in a group of people who have different values from you, it's far more likely that you're going to conform to their values because you desire a polis. They're the people you're hanging out with. You want to policize it, so you're going to develop their virtues or their vices, their values. And so, yeah, we got to watch the people we hang out with. People who challenge us to grow, we should be surrounding ourselves with them as much as possible. I'm not saying never hang out with somebody who doesn't challenge you or doesn't think differently, but when you think about your core people that you spend the most time with, they should be people who share your conception of the good and who share your values and who share your desire to improve in life. So I that's just a great point. And then I'll just stop here that it's always important to remember that you have options, right? I don't do this enough. I don't realize, for instance, if someone asks me my opinion on something, I can say, or if they give an argument, I could argue back, or I could say, well, you've given me a lot to think about. We can opt out sometimes, right? You don't have to answer right then. You don't have to come up with a response right then. You don't have to solve a problem that has arisen right when it has arisen in most cases. This person was talking about anger. They said, some advice I could give to my classmates on this topic: take a deep breath. In the middle of a situation you just want to engage, right, and jump right in and keep it going, you can take a deep breath. Take many deep breaths before responding. We have a professor here at Roberts, so wise, that she asks a question in class, and if students don't answer her, especially if it was on the reading that they were supposed to do, she will sit there for the entire class waiting for a response. It's incredible. I always, I think I told you this, I'll wait 10 seconds. I don't like that silence. I want to just jump in, right? That's my thing I'm always like trying not to do, is jump into silence. And so this is great advice for me, that I don't have to answer right away if someone asks me a question. Obviously, if someone makes you angry and you need to control yourself, you don't have to say anything. You can take some deep breaths before responding. Yeah, just think you always have options. You don't have to do something right in this moment. I love this, that you could just take some deep breaths, give yourself some time to process the situation, and not jump into saying or doing something you might regret. Don't let anybody give you a false timetable on when you have to respond to them, or something that they've said, or something they want from you. If you're not ready and you cannot respond in a way that is excellent, then they'll have to wait, right? That's fine. And I appreciate this. I'm also laid back in a lot of ways. This student said, I've just always been very laid back, which has served me well in life. It goes a long way to be able to keep calm under pressure. A lot of these virtues, some of you said that you actually worked on them and practiced them, a lot of the virtues that you have, but some of them were just, you were lucky in that, your personality just lends you to them, right? Or maybe your parents or the people who raised you kind of inculcated those in you, so they were a gift to you. It's easy for you. This student being very laid back, it's easy for him to stay calm and not to overreact. I tend to be the same way. And so, to keep calm under pressure is important. Being laid back will help you. If you're not laid back, not being laid back helps you with some of the other virtues, right? So our personalities will help us with some virtues, but not others. So if you're a very laid back person, you may be irascible, like I am, or like I was, like I'm fighting against, right? If you're laid back, you might have the advantage of not overreacting in the situation, but you also might be irascible. You might not bother confronting people when they're really doing something that's disrespectful, or confronting people when they're treating someone else the wrong way, and you could make a difference. So probably every personality trait that we have will lend us towards certain virtues and also make certain virtues harder for us. So I think that's interesting. Anyway, I just want to thank you all for the work you do in the forums. Every week I'm just amazed at your insight, and you express yourself so well, and I'm just thankful for that. And so I enjoyed having an opportunity just to go through your comments again, to pull some of them out and have a chance to reflect on them in light of Aristotle and in light of Aquinas, who we're studying for this week. So thank you for watching the video lecture. I look forward to seeing you in person soon, and have a great weekend. Take care.